This would be the Arizona toucan shown in the photographs.
And how do you recognize it as the same?
It appears to be the same, and also the original packaging is attached to it.
All right, could you just kind of hold that up for them a little bit closer and maybe turn it around so that they can, there you go. All right, and when you arrived, was that on top of the yellow medical blanket?
Yes, it was.
All right. In States 145, if you would, tell them how you recognize it and what it is.
This is the flashlight, which was object marker number 5 in the photographs.
And does that also bear the case markings from this particular case?
Yes, it does.
States 146. What is that?
This is the cell phone. That was object marker number 7 in the photographs. Also has the original packaging.
And States 142 and 143. If you can hold those up together. What are those items?
Object marker number 2 and number 3, 2 plastic bags.
And do those also bear the original packaging that you would have put them in before you took them in the property room?
Yes, they do.
States 144. What is that?
The first aid kit, which is object marker number 4 in the photographs. Also,
And a pair of tweezers. All right. And was that also in the original packaging?
yes, it is.
States 150. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
$40.15,
And where did that come from?
collected from the victim's pocket.
All right. Let me show you next, States 149, that packaging. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And is that a composite exhibit? That is, it contains multiple items.
That is correct.
And are the items listed on the packaging itself?
Yes, they are.
And what items came from the packaging?
A red lighter, a photo button, bag of Skittles, and headphones.
All right. And is this the lighter that was originally in that package?
Yes, it is.
All right. And the photo button, is that the same?
Yes, it is.
All right. Package of Skittles.
Yes, it is.
And the headphones.
Yes, they are.
All right. States 141. If you tell the members of the jury what that is.
This would be object marker number 1, the keys, the small flashlight.
You recall whether or not that flashlight was on when you arrived or when you collected it?
Yes, it was on.
And finally, States 147. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
Object marker number 8, the cartridge case.
How do you recognize it to be the same from the scene?
Same caliber, same brand, and also it's attached to the original packaging.
All right. Officer Smith, you may resume your seat. Thank you very much. Officer Smith, did you process any of the items by any means other than photography?
Yes, I did.
All right. Did you do any of that while you were still at the scene?
No, I did not.
And why not?
The weather conditions would not allow me to.
Was Trayvon Martin's body removed from the scene?
Yes, it was.
And it was after that that you found the shell casing?
That is correct.
And how was the shell casing discovered?
By using a metal detector.
Did you search the scene in any way for blood evidence?
Yes, I did.
In what areas did you search?
I searched along the sidewalk, in between the buildings,
And how did you conduct that search?
using a flashlight.
You know, may I press the witness? Let me show you again, Officer Smith, States 139. Can you stand up for me? And just show the members of the jury generally what areas you searched for any blood evidence.
I walked along the T on the sidewalk, down the T, in the grass, and between all these buildings.
And you were using a flashlight.
That is correct.
All right. Did you, other than the area immediately surrounding the body, did you locate any blood at the scene?
No, I did not.
Did you locate any blood in the grass where the body was?
No, I did not.
And approximately how long were you at the scene that evening?
Approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes.
After leaving the scene, did you respond to the Sanford Police Department?
Yes, I did.
And about what time would you have arrived at the police department?
Approximately 11:15 p.m.
And again, this is still on February 26th.
That is correct.
All right. While at the station, did you take photographs of a person later identified to you as George Zimmerman?
Yes, I did.
You see that person in court this afternoon?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify where he's sitting or what he's wearing?
Over to my right, wearing a light-colored jacket and a plaid tie.
Your Honor, I'd ask the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect.
If I have Mr. Zimmerman have somebody swap these batteries out. Was the defendant still at the scene at Retreat at Twin Lakes when you arrived?
No, he was not.
All right, so the first time you would have had contact with him would then have been at the police station?
That is correct.
When you photographed the defendant, did you have him do anything, clean himself up or position himself in any way, or did you just take photographs as he was?
As he was.
All right. States 45, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Judge. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the defendant when you came into contact with him at the police station?
Yes, it is.
All right. And States 46, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Is that a close-up of the defendant that you took at the police station?
Yes, it is.
States 47, is that a further close-up of the face of the defendant that you took that evening?
Yes, it is.
And States 48, yet a closer shot of the defendant's face?
That is correct.
All right. States 49, what's depicted in that photograph?
The shoes?
And did you essentially, in photographing the defendant, take shots literally from head to toe?
Yes, I did.
Front and back?
That is correct.
All right. States 50 then, what does that depict?
Showing the jeans and the shoes.
And States 51?
The jacket, undershirt, and belt.
States 52?
The backside of the jacket, jeans and shoes.
All right. And States 53?
The lower portion of the jeans and the shoes.
States 54?
The lower portion of the jacket and the jeans.
And states 55.
The backside of the jacket
States 56.
and the backside of Zimmerman's head.
States 57.
Just a close-up.
Of the back of his head.
That is correct.
And states 58.
Another close-up.
And states 59.
The backside of Zimmerman's hands.
States 60.
Zimmerman's right hand.
61.
Left hand.
62.
Palm of the right hand.
63.
Palm of the left.
And state 64.
Another front shot of his face.
And did you take several photographs of the defendant's head to preserve through photography any injuries that he may have had at the time?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, state 65. What does that depict?
Showing possible blood.
And state 66? Is that a shot of the right side of his head?
Yes, it is.
And state 67, the left side of his face?
Yes, it is.
And state 68, is that the left side of Mr. Zimmerman's head?
Yes, it is.
All right, state 69, what's depicted there?
This is the top of his head.
And state 70,
The right side.
from the top?
That is correct.
All right, and state 71.
The right side.
And state 72,
The left side.
state 73,
The left side.
and state 74.
The back.
State 75.
The right side.
Yeah, there are no more photographs. Thank you. While you were at the police station, did you also collect the clothes that the defendant had on?
Yes, I did.
And did you get those clothes from the defendant or someone else?
I do believe directly from the defendant.
And how did you package the defendant's clothes?
I gave the defendant paper bags to put his clothing items in.
And did he do that?
Yes, he did.
All right. And what did you do with the defendant's clothes after you collected them?
They were packaged and put into evidence.
All right. Your Honor, may I have the witness step down,
Yes, you may.
if you would? If you approach here. And again, I'm going to need you to, yeah, you can stop right there. We'll bring it out to you. States 151, does that appear to be the jacket that you removed from the defendant or that he removed?
Yes, it does.
All right, other than perhaps some cutouts that have been done for forensic purposes, is that a fair and accurate depiction of the way it appeared at the time?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If you would just come over a little closer. I'm going to ask you if you recognize the packaging associated with States 151.
Yes, I do.
Does that bear the case markings and your markings from the collection in this case?
Yes, it does.
All right. Put those back in there. States 153. You recognize that to be the shirt that the defendant gave you that evening?
Yes, I do.
And again, would you just examine the packaging? Does it bear your markings, the case number, etc.?
Yes, it does.
All right. And states 152, those appear to be the blue jeans that the defendant gave to you.
Yes, they do.
All right. If you would just confirm that through the packaging.
Yes, they do.
All right. You may resume your seat. Officer Smith, in your work in this case, did you process the defendant's firearm?
Yes, I did.
And where did you do that?
At the Sanford Police Department.
All right. And how did you come into possession of the defendant's gun?
I received it from Officer Timothy Smith,
And what kind of firearm was it?
a 9mm Kel-Tec.
Is that a semi-automatic firearm?
Yes, it is.
And had the gun already been secured, that is, unloaded when you received it?
Yes, it was.
Madam Clerk, may I have that exhibit? May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Deputy, could I ask you to examine states 154 to determine whether or not it's been secured with a gun lock?
Yes, it is.
All right. Would you hand that to Officer Smith?
Thank you.
Officer Smith, do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And was that the gun and holster that you received from Officer Tim Smith in connection with this case?
Yes, it
All
is.
right. And do you recognize the packaging, the case number, again, et cetera?
Yes, I do.
Could you hold up the firearm for the jury, please? All right, and the red piece that you're holding in your left hand, is that the end of the gun lock to secure the firearm?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, did that gun lock, was that given to you when you received it from Officer Smith, or is that something that's been added later for courtroom security?
It's been added later.
All right. If you would then, please hold up the holster containing that exhibit. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. May we have the exhibit number, please?
I believe it's 154.
It is.
Thank you.
Officer Smith, did you wear gloves when you handled that firearm?
Yes, I did.
And why did you wear gloves?
To preserve any evidence?
Did you process the firearm in any way?
Yes, I did.
And how did you do that?
For which processing method?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
Oh.
In what ways did you process it?
I processed it for touch DNA and for latent prints.
All right. And when you say touch DNA, what do you mean?
I mean, it's touch DNA, meaning it's not like physical DNA, like the presence of blood. It's something that you may not be able to see.
All right. And how do you process an item for touch DNA?
Use a sterile swab with distilled water. You put that on the tip of the sterile swab. You swab the area for a few minutes, package it, and secure it.
All right. And did you do that with the firearm in this case?
Yes, I did.
And can you show the jury what areas of the firearm you processed for DNA?
Yes, I can. I processed the grip, which is on the back side, the trigger, and the back part of the slide here.
All right. And then what did you do with those swabs?
I submitted them into evidence.
And how many swabs did you collect from the firearm?
3 swabs.
All right. Did you also process the holster for touch DNA?
Yes, I did.
And did you do that in the same manner?
Yes, I did.
And how many swabs did you take from the holster?
Just one.
All right, Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Let me show you States 170. Ask you if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
The 4 swabs that I collected from item TS-1,
And how do you recognize it to be the same?
the object markers, my handwriting, and case number.
All right. You indicated that you also processed the firearm for latent prints. Tell the members of the jury which processing did you do first, that is the swabbing for DNA or the examination for latent prints?
I visually examined it for latent prints prior to swabbing for DNA. After swabbing for DNA, then I processed the rest of the firearm for latent prints.
Okay, why did you process it for DNA prior to using some physical component to process it for fingerprints?
The areas that were swabbed for DNA are less likely to have latent prints appear after processing them.
All right, and explain to the members of the jury, first of all, what is a latent print? What is meant by that?
A latent print is an impression that contains ridge detail.
And how is it that you're able to capture that or preserve that for future examination?
When you're using powders, it adheres to traces of fatty acids, amino acids, and proteins that are within latent prints.
And how do you, physically, how do you use the powder to capture a latent print?
You take the latent brush, you put it in the powder, and you lightly brush the item.
And then what do you do? What's the next step?
And any areas of interest, then you take latent print tape, put it on the item, take it off, put it on a latent print card.
And do you mark the card in any way?
Yes, you do.
And how's that?
You mark it by the case number, the item number, what you're lifting the tape from, and draw a diagram.
And when you processed the firearm, in this case for latent fingerprints, were you able to lift any, to make any lifts onto a card?
Yes, I was.
How many?
Just one.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Let me show you States 183. Ask if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
The latent print card that I pulled from the firearm,
And how do you recognize it to be the same?
my case number, item number, and diagram.
Did you indicate on the latent card itself where the print was taken from the firearm?
Yes, I did.
And how did you do that?
I drew a diagram, circled the area.
All right. Your Honor, may she step down just briefly?
Yes, you may.
Officer Smith, if you join me over here. And again, keep your voice up, and so the court reporter can hear you, and show the members of the jury where on the firearm you took the latent print and how you depicted it on the card.
Here's a lift from the actual firearm. On the opposite side is my diagram and all the information, case number, item number, where it was lifted from.
Okay, and how is it depicted on the diagram where it was lifted from?
There is a circle drawn around it with an X in the middle of it.
All right, so hand that to me. You may resume your seat. Thank you. Officer Smith, so we're clear, is it your job, once you lift or make a lift of a latent print, is it your job to analyze it to determine whether or not it's of any value or whether or not it can be compared to any individual?
No, it's not.
Whose job is that?
That would be a latent analyst.
In a similar manner, when you take a swab from DNA, are you the person who goes on to process that, or is that done by someone else?
That is done by somebody else.
All right. Did you also process in this case the Skittles bag that was shown earlier, as well as the larger black flashlight?
Yes, I did.
And did you swab them for DNA in the manner that you previously described?
Yes, I did.
And again, is that something then that you would turn over to an agency such as the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for analysis of any DNA that may be on there?
That is correct.
All right. Did you also process the larger flashlight, the black flashlight, for latent fingerprints?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
I fumed it and then used black powder.
And were you able to obtain any lifts when you processed the flashlight?
No, I did not.
All right. Did you process any other items in this case for latent lifts?
Yes, I did.
Specifically, did you process the 2 plastic bags that we saw earlier, the white one and the brown one, as well as the keys that were connected to the flashlight?
Yes, I did.
And how did you process those items for latent fingerprints?
They were fumed and processed with black powder or magnetic powder.
All right. And what is it that you mean when you say fumed?
Fuming is a method where we use superglue. We put the items in a chamber, we ignite the superglue, it creates a white gas, and the gas will adhere to traces of the fatty proteins that we discussed earlier, and it forms to the ridges, making the latent print a little bit more visible.
All right. And were you able to obtain any latent lifts from either of the plastic bags, the keys, or the flashlight?
No, I did not.
All right. You know, may I approach?
Yes,
States 169. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Are those the DNA swabs that you took from the Skittles packaging and the larger black flashlight?
Yes, they are.
All right. Let me turn your attention then to Tuesday, February 28th. Did you collect any evidence from the medical examiner's office on that date in connection with this case?
Yes, I did.
And when you collected those items, did you do anything to them? Did you process them in any way?
No, I did not.
Did you repackage those items in any way?
There might be a couple of them that I did.
All right. Was your goal essentially to transport those items from the security of the medical examiner's office to the property room with the Sanford Police Department?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, you may.
Let me show you States 164. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
This is the watch that the victim was wearing.
All right. And can you just hold that up for the members of the jury? As best you can. All right. And States 191, is that a item of evidence that you collected from the medical examiner's office?
Yes, it is.
And specifically, are those the tools, if you will, or sticks that were used to scrape fingernail scrapings from Trayvon Martin?
Yes, they are.
And is that something that you did yourself or something that the personnel at the medical examiner's office would have undertaken?
The personnel at the medical examiner's office.
All right. Let me show you states 186. And what is that?
This is the FTA card.
And is that otherwise commonly known as a blood spot stain card?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. And was that also collected from the victim by the personnel at the medical examiner's office?
Yes, it was.
And states 165, what is contained in that exhibit?
This is the projectile.
Recovered from Trayvon Martin's body by the medical personnel at the medical examiner's office?
Yes, that is correct.
And you had mentioned earlier that you had made a diagram of the scene and then turned that over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for the computer renditions. Let me show you 168 and ask you if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
Is that the diagram and legend to the diagram with measurements that you completed in this case?
Yes, it is.
And is that the same copy or exact copy of the original that you turned over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes, it is.
Let's read those from you. Officer Smith, thank you for your time. Your Honor, that's all I have.
Thank you. Would this be a good time to take a break?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. If you'll please place your notepads face down on the chair and follow Corporal Debs back into the jury room. Okay, Officer Smith, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. That means you're allowed to walk around and get off the stand, but you're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anybody, and that includes the lawyers. Thank you. Court will be in recess for 15 minutes.
We have an extra slide. There's a matter that Mr. Zimmerman needs to deal with.
Okay, we'll take 20 minutes. Are we ready to bring the jury back in?
Yes,
State? Okay, let's go ahead and bring them in.
Jury present, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Officer Smith.
Afternoon.
Have you ever actually been on patrol with your husband? I understand that you're married to the first responding officer to the scene in this instance, Timothy Smith?
That is correct.
Which?
He is my husband.
Right. Have you ever, I'm just curious, have you ever been on patrol with him?
I've done ride-alongs before.
Well, I meant patrol as a police officer.
No, sir.
Any reason why? Does the department keep you from doing that on purpose?
I'm not a police officer.
What would the better title then be than officer? Sorry.
Crime scene technician?
Okay, is that your title at work, crime scene technician?
Yes, it is.
All right. Can I just call you Ms. Smith? Is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. I want to talk a little about in general, and then we'll talk about some specifics. If there is a question I ask you that you don't know, but you can figure out by looking at something, just say so, and we'll give you a chance to do that. If there's no way you can because you don't have the material available, say that too, and we'll move on. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
So you measure the scene prior to the collection of evidence,
That is correct.
and you record those measurements in notes, ultimately then on a diagram.
That is correct.
Could I then ask you for some measurements so you could tell me how far it is from certain points to other points so that we can get oriented as to the scene itself?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Marker number 1 is the key, the Honda key with the little flashlight on it. And marker 6 is where Mr. Martin's body was identified. Are you able to tell me roughly how far it is from marker 1 to marker 6?
No, sir.
Would referring to any of the diagrams or your sketch help with that?
No, sir.
Okay. Can you estimate it for me?
No, sir.
Okay. Who would be able to do that was connected in the case?
The FDLE personnel that did the total station.
Is that Ms. Orta?
Yes, I do believe so.
On your left are some diagrams. Is that what's been generated by the total station system?
Yes, that is correct.
And is that the work product of Ms. Orta?
Yes, it is.
So you didn't personally participate in generating those diagrams?
That is correct.
So whatever you could tell us about them would be what you remember from the scene or what somebody told you that she did?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there any way you can look at that diagram? Is there a scale or something that would help identify the distances that I'm talking about from, say, marker 1 to marker 6?
No, there's not.
Did you take any measurements that night yourself?
Yes, I did.
And did you record them in a report of some kind?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you have that available?
I do not have the sketch available, no, sir.
There was one of the exhibits seemed like it was drawings. I can maybe find the number, or if you recall. This is 168.
Thank you.
Is 168 your drawing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now that you have that in front of you, are you able to give me, was that designed from a fixed reference point?
From 2 fixed reference points.
All right, so that doesn't help you measure from one marker to the next.
That is correct.
Okay. So we then would have to go to the total station data to do that?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's no help at all. Sorry. I'm sorry, there's an exhibit with some swabs, other than the ones I have. From the crime scene standpoint, the measurements that you took from the fixed reference points were then designed so that with the total station data, you'd be able to identify specific measurements if asked later on.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The photos, though, were photos that you took?
Yes, that is correct.
The exhibits that are in evidence here today are photos that you took there at the scene?
That is correct.
So you were there personally looking and identifying and photographing each of the exhibits and the markers where they were pictured here?
That is correct.
Okay. So you had a hands-on view of the actual evidence?
That is correct.
Marker number 1 is this, this Honda key with the little flashlight. I think you said it was on. Was that something you witnessed or something somebody told you?
No, I witnessed it.
So apparently it had been on then prior to your arrival.
That is correct.
You didn't have any reason to think that anyone had tampered with the evidence?
No, I did not.
No reason to think that anyone had been picking up or handling any of the evidence prior to your arrival?
No, I did not.
I think you, your husband, Tim Smith, was the first responding officer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So your understanding was that he was on site very, very soon in these events.
That is correct.
So law enforcement took charge of the scene right away.
Yes, that is correct.
That's important for you, isn't it, later on, that the scene not be contaminated?
Yes, that is correct.
That all of the evidence that you collect actually be where you see it that it originally was?
Yes, that is correct.
Do you think that the only evidence that may have been moved, if you will, was Mr. Martin's body?
And the Arizona Tecan.
Was it your information that that had been in his clothing and removed by responding officers?
Or responding medical.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Martin's body was covered by that blanket that's been described when you got there. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And it remained in that condition until the arrival of the medical examiner investigator?
Other than photographs beforehand.
When in time did you take the photographs of Mr. Martin's body?
I don't recall if it was before the medical examiner's office arrived or when they arrived.
Might it have been in conjunction with them then?
Yes,
Wouldn't typically in that situation, if the medical examiner's investigator is there, that person might retrieve personal effects, for example, and give them to you as the crime scene tech.
that is correct.
Is that what happened here?
Yes, it is.
So as items from pockets, the money, the change, the lighter, etc., was removed from pockets, it would have been handed to you, logged in and packaged?
That is correct.
And then it's likely that you took the photographs of Mr. Martin's body in conjunction with that process being done by the medical examiner's investigator?
Yes, that is correct.
You wouldn't have removed the blanket yourself to take photos prior to the medical examiner's investigator getting there, would you, typically?
Sometimes.
Did you in this case?
I don't recall.
In any event, there's nothing that deviated substantially from the protocol that you're used to in connection with these kinds of things.
That is correct.
You mentioned that you searched for blood on the sidewalk by walking the path with a flashlight. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you walked across two sides of the T.
That is correct.
Had anyone pointed out to you specific areas in which to look?
I don't believe so.
So you made just what you would usually do then, sort of a general pass in the vicinity to see if there was any obvious blood.
That is correct.
So you didn't do an exhaustive search, I take it?
Myself and several officers on scene did a very long search.
I meant for the blood. When you were walking down the sidewalk with the flashlight, the idea was to see if there was obvious blood?
Yes,
And it was raining,
that is correct.
and the event itself would have been passed by a couple of hours at least by this point?
It's possible.
There are chemicals that can be used by crime scene technicians that would react in the presence of blood. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You're familiar generally with how that works?
Yes,
In this instance, there were no chemicals used specifically on the sidewalk or anywhere else that might reveal the presence of blood.
that is correct.
When you went to the medical examiner's office in Volusia County to collect evidence, that included the clothing, I take it, that Mr. Martin was wearing on the evening of February 26th?
Yes, that is correct.
That's what you were told anyway,
Yes, that is correct.
right? You didn't open the packages or examine them in any way.
I believe so.
You made the comment, maybe it was in passing, about maybe you repackaged some things. What were you referring to, if you remember?
The FTA card, some standards that came back from the medical examiner's office.
Okay, not the clothing.
No, not the clothing.
As far as you know, you never opened the bag that contained either any of the clothing.
Yes, that is correct.
Did the clothing that you collected include Mr. Martin's pants?
I do believe so.
Uh-huh. Have you seen them here in the courtroom?
I don't believe so.
Your Honor, we check the record? Are the pants identified as an exhibit? I'm sorry. Ms. Smith, do you remember whether you retrieved the pants from the medical examiner?
I do believe I did.
Would you well, I guess you wouldn't recognize them, or would you, since you never saw them?
Only by the photographs.
All right. Could I show you what's been identified and entered, actually, as 157? Is that correct? Thank you. Could I get some help? Just right there, just show it to the. Do you recognize those to be from the photographs, the pants that Trayvon Martin was wearing the night of February 26th and that you picked up from the medical examiner's office?
They appear to be similar.
And they are in evidence by stipulation, I believe.
Yes, they are, number 157.
Thank you. If we could talk a little bit about some of the forensic swabbing that you did. Do I understand that as the crime scene technician, you would take the physical item itself and use a swab like we have here and rub it on the item?
That is correct.
The idea would be if there's some kind of biological evidence there of some sort, it would be on the swab.
That is correct.
And when it's submitted for processing, is it just the swab that's sent to the lab?
Yes, it is.
So the physical item itself is not, for example.
That is correct.
So other than perhaps a general description of what item or what part of the item was being swabbed, there's no specific spot identified where on the item the swab was made.
That is correct.
For example, on the bag of Skittles, the candy, you would have made one swab from the entire package.
It's possible.
Well, I have Exhibit 169, and you could tell me if you made more than that.
Just one swab.
And likewise for the flashlight?
Also one swab.
Thank you. When you got to the scene, I think the flashlight is marker number 5, is that right?
I believe so.
it was not on, correct?
That is correct.
Was the purpose of the swab of the Skittles and the flashlight for touch DNA or some other kind of DNA?
I believe it was touch DNA.
Is that the same with the firearm?
Yes, that is correct.
And with the firearm, the swabs included one from the trigger, one from the grip, one from the slide, and then one from the holster. Is that correct? I'm referencing exhibit number 170.
Yes, that is correct.
You're not aware of any other swabs that you didn't include in evidence?
That is correct.
And likewise, then, would it have been the swabs that were tendered to FDLE rather than the firearm itself?
That is correct.
After you finished the swabbing is when you did the latent print examination, or did I get that backwards?
No, that is correct.
The procedure for making one of the swabs is using a swab with sterile water and then just wiping it on the surface.
Yes, that is correct.
And you wipe it, I suppose, as thoroughly as you can,
Yes, that is correct.
and then you're done.
That is correct.
Okay. And then that goes in the tube or whatever, and it goes off to the lab.
Yes, that is correct.
You aren't necessarily seeing anything.
Not all the time, no.
Or did you in this case on the firearm?
I do not believe so.
Can you tell me a little bit more about touch DNA?
In regards to collecting or in general?
Well, am I correct? I think you said basically that touch DNA is sometimes, if somebody touches a surface, it's possible to get DNA.
Correct, if enough skin cells are left behind.
So is that where it comes from?
The touch DNA?
Right.
Yes, sir.
So the basis of the DNA, the touch DNA, is that somebody touches an item and under some circumstances may leave behind some skin cells.
Yes, sir.
And if there are enough skin cells left behind, then sometimes at our state of the art, if you will, in the DNA analysis, there can be a result.
Yes, that is correct.
You don't do that analysis yourself.
No, I do not.
So the touch DNA based upon skin cells, for example, would be subject to being wiped off.
It's possible.
If somebody else handles the item, for example, they could wipe off whatever skin cells were there, correct?
It's possible.
When you say possible, you mean within your world, not just some sort of anything's possible, but you take that into account, don't you?
Yes.
So from a forensic standpoint, it's entirely possible that someone, well, first of all, someone could touch something and not leave enough skin cells behind for there to be any DNA analysis possible.
That is correct.
That's part, okay. And then even if they did, if somebody else handled it, they could wipe off the DNA that the other person left.
They could.
In fact, I suppose they could replace it with their own.
Or add to it.
Sure, okay. So the idea of the touch DNA isn't that it's something that's on there for sure and stays no matter what happens.
Right, that is correct.
You got the firearm after it had already been taken into evidence, correct?
That is correct.
And you were provided it at some point at the Sanford Police Department?
That is correct.
So the firearm had been recovered at the scene and then provided at some later time to you?
That is correct.
If we could talk about the photographs for a minute that you took. Not the photos at the scene, but the ones at the Sanford Police Department. Are you able to tell us when it was that you took the pictures of Mr. Zimmerman?
It would have been sometime after 11:15 p.m. on the 26th.
Would that information be embedded in the data of the image?
I do believe it could be.
You used a digital camera, obviously.
Yes, I did.
So you record it on what, like an SD card or something, and then transfer it to an evidence file?
Yes, that is correct.
By the time you had gotten to the Sanford Police Department, Mr. Zimmerman had already been there several hours, is that right?
Yes, I believe that is correct.
He had already been provided access to a bathroom to clean himself up.
That I don't know about.
Did you ever see the pictures of him at the scene?
I honestly don't recall.
You, though, took pictures of him as you saw him somewhere between 11:15 and, we'll say, midnight, for example.
Yes, that is correct.
Is that pretty standard in your work as well?
Yes, it is.
If you have an individual in custody that was involved in an incident, it's not uncommon for you simply to document their condition by taking a number of photographs.
That is correct.
And you, as Mr. Guy suggested, you would want to get sort of a head-to-toe view.
Yes, that is correct.
In this instance, Mr. Zimmerman's injuries were on his face and head.
That is correct.
Could we display some of the photos, please? May I get some assistance there?